And we're exploring a topic that I'm not that familiar with, but I've heard a lot about, and I've certainly read a lot about carbon credits. And so we have joining us today Beau Parmenter, and he has a carbon credits company. Let's start it off with probably a lot of people out there are as ignorant about this as I am. So just assume no one knows anything about this and take it away and explain why we should know about this.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me. And the purpose of carbon credits, the definition of a carbon credit is 1 ton, 2,000 pounds of carbon permanently sequestered from the atmosphere. So you're actually pulling the carbon out of the air and cleaning the air up that you and I all breathe and share with every other human and plant and animal on Earth.
All right, so describe your process for carbon capture and sort of what makes you a leader that you believe you are in that field.
So we set off for a different path in the industry. We saw a lot of what was going on, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I've got a lot of common sense. And I was looking at a lot of these things, and it just didn't add up to me. So I said, how can we do this and do this right? So we started back in 2018 with a lot of different trials in our laboratory. We were growing a lot of different plants. We were combining a lot of different plants, breeding them together, a lot of tissue culture work, and a lot of R&D went into this. And we were able to come up with our proprietary plant, and then we wanted to amplify it, so we added a proprietary bacteria to it. In addition to that, we went ahead and created a biochar for a finished product because part of the process is permanently sequestering it. So we're pulling more out of the air than any other process while producing about 22% more oxygen than trees produce. Keep in mind, trees will temporarily sequester carbon from the atmosphere, but trees store it in the green leafy plant matter of the tree. And when the leaves fall off in the fall, it's dispersed back into the air as it decomposes. Plus, you got the decomposition factor of it. So you've got another 10 to 15%, depending on what type of tree it is, if it's a locust or a big oak with large leaves, while it's going back into the air. So they're actually creating carbon, even though they're temporarily sequestering it. I'm not saying trees are bad because they're still releasing oxygen, not as much. So all of that helps lower the ppm numbers on it. But we wanted to make sure that we're actually permanently sequestering. We were putting it away. So then it goes into biochar, which is used in our plant-based concretes, as well as several other compositions. We're making plastics, we're making woods, we're making rubbers. We just had a phenomenal development in our laboratory last week with some of our rubbers that we've made here on our facility in Chesaning. So, that's what really makes a big difference is when you're actually permanently sequestering it, you're permanently putting it away. It's going down into the rocks. The plant's got a hollow core, and while it's pulling water in, it's ejecting the carbon down as deep as the roots go, which vary depending on what the soil type is, on where it is, in the world. Obviously, everybody's got different soil types, different water elevations, but we've seen the depths as far as 80 feet where we've pulled carbon up. We test before we plant, and we test halfway through our cycle, and then we test at the end of our cycle for all of our soil samples, as well as we test our plants. That way we're verifying everything that we're capturing.
So I'm just curious, what plant did you decide to use? What kind of plant did you decide to use for this capture?
So it's from 4 different plants, 3 of them primarily, but we used hemp, we used bamboo, we used part of poison ivy, and then we use a little bit of a locust tree. So
Poison ivy. Yeah, that would not go over well with me. I'm highly allergic, but certainly hemp and bamboo. Um, what can companies do to be more environmentally friendly?
So for companies to be more environmentally friendly, they really need to take a very wide approach at their company. Obviously, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that companies can start with. LED lights. We've got some very efficient filters that let up to 60% more airflow through, and that really cuts down on energy, gas, electric consumption, as well as extends the lives of a lot of these HVAC units. We've got gas atomizers that increase the efficiency of anything that runs on natural gas that has a burn rate, and increasing the efficiency obviously cuts dramatically down on the emissions that are created from it. And then one of the big things is you get down to your scope 3, which is all the materials that you bring in. What can you bring in that you can get away from a petroleum product, which has a high carbon footprint, and get into a natural plant-based product and still create a good product? And there's a lot of different options, and just kind of starting with those approaches is a really good way for companies to really be able to get in and make sure that they're making a sustainable difference for the future.
All right. And what incentives are out there for companies to become closer to carbon neutral?
So the incentives vary depending on what country you're in. We're in the United States, and we've actually got the best incentives. So we're in a very good spot to be sitting. I've got a map that kind of shows where everybody's at. It's continuously changing. But for instance, the United States, everybody's got the write-off, so they can write it off. So I urge companies to take 100% of the tax liability and invest it in carbon credits. Then they're not out anything from the initial investment already, so they're at a break even. And then because our method captures it and pulls it down and permanently sequesters it down into the earth directly through the air and does not release it back into the atmosphere similar to trees, we actually qualify for direct air capture. Direct air capture gives them that current rate, another $180 a ton. So roughly it's like somebody getting another 36% back. So somebody, for say, if it was a company that had a $10 million tax liability and they went and invested in carbon credits, obviously they'd be at zero at that point. They'd get the 45Q back. They'd be $3.6 million ahead of where their company was prior to doing that. And they would be doing the right thing for the environment and making the air and world we live in a lot cleaner and a lot more sustainable for our future, so we can stop this global warming and all the natural disasters that are being created from it.
So I'm curious, what's your background? The background that you sent us said you founded the company in 2019. What had you been doing up to that point?
So I've got an excavation, demolition, and concrete company, and we've done a lot of environmental work for the last 24 years. A lot of cleanups, and I didn't like the way that a lot of it has went. Traditionally, environmental cleanup in the United States is dilution is the solution. So if it's a very acidic environmental cleanup, they're basically putting commercial baking soda on it to neutralize it and alkaline it, and just keep diluting it down and then let the rest wash into the waterways or wherever it happens to be is what their solution is, rather than actually removing the problem. So we wanted to, make a method where we were actually removing the problem, and that's what we've been able to do, and permanently sequester it.
All right.
Well,
Go ahead,
if
Matt.
someone
Take us
would like
down.
more, if someone would like more information about this process and how it could benefit their business or their operations, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they can get on our website, dynamiccarboncredits.com. They can fill out an inquiry on there. Our phone number's on there, and they can get a lot of information from there as well. We've got an inquiry form. All of our emails are listed on there, depending on what they're looking for, and we can send out presentations if they want to put it in front of their directory boards. We can send out a group of our sales leaders to be able to present for their companies. A lot of the times, because it's a directory level, they need to be able to show everybody else. So